you very much for these very kind words. This is just to disappoint you. I'm not going to talk about punishment. But I thought, this is an interdisciplinary group, so I report on some very new work that I did on. This is about a sort of a social dilemma we'll be talking about. A weak link game, coordination problem, which is also sort of a social threat because, as you can see, but this is, I'm extremely pleased to be here. I feel very honored, and I know surprisingly many people here, and I was particularly surprised and honored to see Wandel here, from whom I have learned. Wandel gave the most important lecture that I took as a student. This changed this is why I'm here actually. There's a causal link between his lecture at the University of Vienna, the Institute of Advanced Studies in 1991 to the causal link. I feel very pleased. So this is something different. So something I haven't done before. I talk about relationships today, close relationships, and what they have to do with coordination. So that's. So overall, this is joint work with Chris Starmer, my colleagues Chris Starmer and Fabio Tufano, and it's part of a larger grant, a research project that the European Research Council gratefully has funded, and this is about it's called putting strong reciprocity into context. It's about taking social relations, taking the social environment much more seriously than we have done so far. I will talk a bit more about that while we do this project. But lots of the research that we have been doing basically stripped away the role of social context. People take decisions under conditions of full anonymity. They have no personality, they have no social relations, they just themselves. And they might play a game, but they don't know with whom they are playing this. And then we see what they do. We learned extremely important lessons from this type of research about people's social preferences, about their punitive preferences, about their social their risk preferences, and so on and so forth, under these conditions. But I think it's now time to move one step closer to realism, and this is moving away from this completely anonymous conditions and introduce some element of realism into this in a hopefully still experimentally controlled way, and taking some elements of reality much more seriously. So what is this about today? So the work cost model here is not the published goods game as I normally study. Most of what I do is published goods games. So this is another social dilemma, but one that we call a coordination game. The problem of coordination is the one that I'm interested in here today. And obviously, this is a group activity. There are famous coordination problems, if you will, in sports, in the workplace, in the army. I arrived by plane this morning. This is another organizational coordination problem that has to be solved for me to come here. Many people have to work together. And I could only depart after everybody's job on the airport dispatch group was done, finished. So that's a coordination problem. And it was successfully solved because I left on time and I arrived on time. So obviously not all coordination problems are actually successful. There are lots of examples of failed coordination problems, and textbooks are full of that. When you study organizational failure, it's at the heart of it often a coordination problem when things don't work out. So how have economists studied this so far? This problem. So again, using this incredibly important paradigm of experimental games, studied and played under anonymity in laboratory conditions like this one, where everybody is isolated from everyone else. We study determinants of successful coordination or coordination failure. So this includes lots of different things. I don't have time to talk about in detail, but structural features like how big is the group, who is matched with whom, what do people know, is there a leader, is there effective communication between them, who communicates with whom, is there advice, are there incentives, are there bonuses, whatever. These are structural features, and all of them have put, many of these features have been studied in great detail and have led to great insights about when coordination works and when it doesn't. So very important research. But here we focus on a neglected aspect of this that I think is part of many of those environments to which this type of mechanisms actually apply. This is people who have to collaborate have social relations. Yeah? And the question is, to what extent this mere fact of social relations matters for coordination success. So, to put this into the bigger perspective, here's a nice quote by Barron and Krebs in their Handbook of Organizational Economics. And they have argued, you know, the employment relationship is simultaneously an economic and a social relationship. You cannot profitably study either one of them in isolation. So to understand employment relationship requires taking into account both economic and social psychological dimensions of the content and context, and especially about how economic and social forces interact. So what I will talk about now is actually an illustration, I think, of what this could mean in our research on these topics. Yeah? Because what I will be showing you is a tool from social psychology and relationship psychology that we will deploy to study coordination. So you can ask, okay, social relations, you know, how do we measure them? But before we go to measurement, talk about why do we think it matters at all to look at social relations, apart from just saying something in reality. Many things happen in reality, so we abstract away from them fruitfully all the time. Yeah, but here the hypothesis is that the group performance depends, in part at least, on the social relationships that exist within groups. Now, why do we believe that? Yeah, because probably social relationships influence a thing called social preferences. How do I care about other people, which we have studied and provided evidence for through many anonymous experiments. And they might also help coordinate beliefs, which is a central element in successful coordination. So both of these things might help coordination. But this is itself not enough because because it clearly raises the issues of how do we measure that, and how can we any idea about what these relationships actually are. Yeah? So if you read the psychology literature on this, then you quickly realize it's a complex, multi-dimensional thing, this social relationships. It's a function of mutual knowledge, shared experience, and a lot of other things about liking, shared values, and so on and so forth. And now you can say, if you're an economist, it gets a bit too muddy for me. So the question is, can we get some clarity and simplification into here? So and can we measure this in the first place? So it's an unobservable. Yeah, I mean, it's an unobservable that in every real group that exists, people have some sort of social relations or feeling of closeness to other people. That's an inevitable feature of any real group. The question is, can we deploy this somehow for successful coordination in our case? So what we will be doing here is to create an index of group cohesion, which is a function of people's social relations, and use this to explain group coordination success and between group variation in coordination success. Yeah. You can think of group cohesion as a label somehow for a potentially complex set of social relationships that exist within a group. Yeah. So here is our strategy. So we look at real groups. So this is a bit of a departure from lots of studying groups in groups, and we use the so-called minimal group paradigm to induce groups that didn't exist before. Here we look at real groups. Yeah, as we encounter them. In our case, it will be groups of friends or acquaintances. We measure the closeness of their social relations as perceived to have existed before the experiment, and then we aggregate this to a group statistics. Yeah, and we will elicit some background characteristics. Yeah, we will observe behavior in a weak link games, which I explained what they are, coordination games. And there will be 3 steps in the analysis that I will present in the following. First one is that we investigate the link between group cohesion and coordination, and then we will see some of this to happen. So otherwise I wouldn't be giving this talk, I guess. But then we benchmark this, what we can achieve through group cohesion alone with standard economic tools like the importance of incentives, as we studied before, and the role of social preferences and for coordination. Yeah. So we break this down. So when we look at real groups here, so we ask each invitee to bring 3 additional people who all knew each other and the invitee. Okay? So then, once they arrive at the lab, there are 2 conditions. We call the F-matching condition. The group of 4 people come to the lab, and they stay together for the duration of the experiment. They know this. So the group of 4 people, they come and they stay together and they play together. In the N condition, they come together, but they are broken up into they go to different groups. Everybody goes to a different group. But none of these 4 friends or acquaintances stay in the same group. We call this the N-matching condition. So why do we do that? We keep the recruitment constant. Everybody comes and is recruited in the exact same way. But this way, we create. We expect that the F-matching groups, they have closer social relations than the broken up groups who are matched with somebody they don't know. Yeah. So the F-matching gives us some natural variation that we have in real groups. Yeah. So we get an idea about hopefully a large range of relationship closeness within groups. Naturally, some groups will have high group cohesion, will be closely knit, other groups will be just loose. Yeah? So we get some variation that we will exploit to estimate the potential link between coordination and group cohesion. The N-matching minimizes the relationship closeness that exists between people because they are matched with somebody who they don't know. Yeah? Probably. So we had in the first experiment 260 people, 65 groups, which were 47 were in the F-matching and 18 in the N-matching. So now to the muddy part, which hopefully comes out as quite simple. So measuring social relations. When I got into this, I was actually wondering whether this is. I started reading the first papers on this. That this is all very complicated. So how can we get something simple? So then we came across a bunch of important papers here. In particular, these papers by Kelly and Burchard et al., who provide the psychological foundations of close relationships. They are actually interested in really close, personal, in most of the cases intimate relationships, which is sort of semi-relevant for most economics applications. Yeah, but still they are an important foundational piece of the whole thing. So in this conceptual relationship closeness, how close I feel to somebody is a function of how often I interact with somebody, how long, the strengths of others' influence on me. So do I follow what they say? Do I listen to their advice? And also a function of how many activities we actually share with one another. So this was conceptualized in a paper by Kelly, and they developed a questionnaire published in Burchard, which is a 63-item long questionnaire that measures all of these aspects. So it's a psychometrically validated instrument that these people have provided, but because it's 63 items, it's not very practical. You cannot use this for experimental economics purposes, really. So, fortunately, other social psychologists had the same problem. So, Aaron et al. They developed a questionnaire item, which I will show you in a second, called the inclusion of the other in the self, which is extremely simple and handy. And they say it's a short version of measuring this complex tool that Burchard et al. Provided. A second instrument is the V-scale by Cialdini, which I will also mention in a second. Both of these papers are cited a lot, published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, and used very frequently by other people, in particular those who study close relations. So here is the measuring a close relationship thing, the inclusion of the other in the self-task, according to Aaron et al., applied to our context. So participants are told, before they read this text, so please look at the circles diagrams provided on your desk, then consider which of these pairs of circles best represents your connection with this person before this experiment. So with a particular person, they are asked to look at the particular person and describe which of these circles best describes their relationship to state. So as you can see, these 7 circles here, they're quite they're disjoint here, self and other, and they start to merge until they are very close. Yeah? So if somebody says, I feel very close, they're probably picking this one. If they say I have nothing to do with this other person, they pick this one. Yeah? So Aaron et al. Provide evidence that this is a psychometrically valid instrument and correlates with the relationship closeness index as developed in this complex questionnaire. Yeah? So according to Aaron et al., it taps into people's sense of being interconnected, which might arise from all sorts of psychological processes. Yeah? So it's a handy tool. You don't need to know what the source of people's feelings of closeness is to somebody else. You can just basically back it up. Yeah? So a related questionnaire, the V scale, please select the appropriate number below to indicate to what extent before this experiment you would have used the term V to characterize you and this particular person. Yeah? Also a scale from 1 to 7, not at all, to very much so. Yeah? So somebody who feels very close will probably say, I feel very much like, and we use V, yeah, very much to describe our relationship. So this is so the average of this iOS scale, the circle scale, and the V scale is called the oneness index, according to Charlene, who invented that. So, and its oneness is a sense of shared, merged, or interconnected personal identities. So, okay, again, when I saw this, I thought that I don't really understand this very well. So, and I want to understand this. This looks like an attractive tool, but can I believe this? If you want to convince yourself and other people that this is a good tool, is it actually valid? Yeah. And is it replicable? So we decided to do a bottom-up replication study of this, which we published in this paper last year. I talked about it. So we did it on MTurk, Amazon Mechanical Turk, in the internet. And we found, quite to our surprise, that it replicates extremely well. It replicates exactly as published in the original papers, on this paper and pencil by students 30 years ago in the classroom. It's exactly the same thing. We replicated almost every statistic reported in these papers. So we replicated the relationship closeness inventory, the loving and liking scale, Rubin, another thing I didn't talk about, and a newer measure of relationship closeness called the personal acquaintance measure. All of these questionnaires replicate exactly as reported in those papers, plus as they correlate the correlations to the iOS scale, this simple thing, yeah, is also exactly as reported in those papers. So what does that mean? It means, you know, these questionnaires, they go at different aspects, psychological details of how and why somebody feels close to somebody else, psychologically. They give one of those answers in the B scale and the iOS scale. For the reasons that are identified in detail by these questionnaires. But this questionnaire, therefore, is a handy tool that picks up those relationships. We don't need to know why this is the case. Yeah, exactly. But it makes sense. So here what we did is we looked at, I developed an index of relationship closeness that's a principal component of these mini questionnaires here. And here is our score of the iOS scale, and you see it's very well ordered. So people who say they score low on the iOS scale, which is 1, this basically means I chose the non-overlapping circles and I said we have nothing, we wouldn't not at all use V characterize our relationship. These are the people down here. People up here would say, you know, very much I would choose this circle, these overlapping circles, and I would say, yes, of course, very much I would use the term V to characterize our relationship. And that correlates with this index of relationship closeness that we could back out through principal component analysis of these questions. So in our conclusion to this is, this tool is extremely handy and fully reliable in terms of its replicability, as claimed in published research. It's a tool which I think I now understand, and which that was the only useful lesson to learn from this, to know how to replicate psychometric studies from the past. So, but it convinced me that this is a useful thing to go, for us to go ahead, is what we are doing. It measures something real, psychologically. For real, it's very simple. It's really as simple as just using the circuits. And it's meaningful, psychologically meaningful. So now the question is, okay, this is a, this relationship closeness is a bilateral concept. I'm asked, how close do I feel to Felix? So how close do I feel to Simone? How close do I feel to Werner? And then, can we create a group statistic out of this? Because at the end, that's what we are interested in. We're not interested in individuals in this particular research. We are interested in groups. So, and therefore we need to develop a measure group cohesiveness. So how, the idea is very simple. In groups where everybody feels close to one another, imagine a group where everybody feels very close to one another, we call this a very cohesive group, highly cohesive group. And whereas compared to a group where everybody basically has nothing in common, which is an uncohesive group. So basically what we do is we ask every group member to rate each other group member on both scales. They do this anonymously in the sense that their partner would know, that the person who they evaluate wouldn't know the answers. Would never be told the answers. No feedback. So here is how it works. So we have 4 group members who we label A, B, C, and D, and everybody rates everyone else. Okay. So they sit in their cubicles, they know who the other person is, so they have, let's say they know, they see this other person, and are asked, what's your relationship closeness? These iOS scales, these answers, these 2 answers, 2 questions. Is this specified other person? So they know who the person is, but the rating is another. They are not told this. Is that clear?
How did that work in the M matching?
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's just.
But how would I know that you are the one behind that screen?
Because what we did is, okay, maybe actually this particular case, you see, these are 4 workstations. In an M matching, they would, these 4 people would be from different groups. They wouldn't know these people necessarily, And then we just ask them, how do you rate this, everybody? You might get, you don't know this person, so maybe there could still be reasons why you would feel close to somebody, But it's just another person, Okay. In the F matching, it's the same. So they know who these other people are.
Could I just? But it allows for very strange relationships. Everybody could just like his clockwise neighbor, and nobody else. The others I hate. And compared to a situation where I have the same average value with all 3 aspects, so it's a bit. It could be just no group as such, because it's, I just like my.
Okay. So I don't know exactly. So let's say the reason why this suggests that there are many reasons why people feel close to somebody. And this is exactly why you don't want to go into these details. It's not, but according to our replication results and according to this published stuff, the published studies, we suggest that this is psychologically real. It picks up something, whatever it is. So let's say here is an example, and I show you the statistic in a second. So this is an example of our most cohesive group we have in the data set. So remember, the scale is from 1 to 7. Both scales are from 1 to 7, and the iOS is the circle scale. We read question, and we take the average. So for example, this person A rated person C 7 on average. So the overlapping circles and the highest level on the V scale. And this person A rated B at 5.5 on average, and so on. So you see this for all. This gives us the full set of all bilateral relationships that we have. So what do you see here? These tend to be reciprocal. Yeah, but it's not necessarily the case that I feel as close to you than you feel to me. Can be asymmetric, but it's expected to correlate, and it does correlate at about 0.6. So it's bilateral relationships. So it also that makes also sense. It makes that this is not perfect. Somebody will like somebody, but they don't like you.
So the group cohesion is just the average of these 12 numbers?
So group cohesion is now, you can come up with several statistics, whatever you think, how you aggregate this. Now here we took the average of the individual minimal oneness ratings. So the average of the individual minimal oneness ratings. So the minimal here for A it was 5.5, 5.5, 6, and 5. So the average of it is 5.5 in this case. But you can come up with the average or with some other statistics. We played around with this a bit. It doesn't matter much for what I'm talking about, and this is closest to the minimum effort game we're playing later on.
Yeah, that would mean if there's a group where 3 are very cohesive and all hate one guy, that would be as bad as all hate each other.
Maybe yes. So it's not without problems at all measures. Or some anomalies. I agree with that. We haven't explored this so much so far. I'm able to answer this question. Possible. So here is what we get in terms of the distribution of group cohesion in our natural groups. These are all groups, or real groups. So this on the x-axis here you see group cohesion ranging from 1. We had a few groups where they indeed said they have nothing to do with this other person. Everybody was completely disjointed to everybody else. Both on the iOS scale and TV scale up to this group you see here, which is up here. And so these black bars are from the F matching, and the gray bars are from the N matching. So N matching, remember, are those who have been broken up upon arrival. F matching are those who come as a group and stay as a group. So the difference in the, as you also would expect, the difference in the scores and these group cohesion scores is highly significant. So it's that, but there is, coming back to your case, there are some people who, for whatever reason, they feel relatively close to these other people. And I don't know why that is, and I also don't need to know.
I think on this, you see, once you use for the person, you use the min operator,
Yes.
and then for the group, you take the average operator.
Yes.
So that needs to be justified. So
They
you
just
might also do it otherwise.
Yes.
Like Axel said, take the average throughout,
take the
or
average.
take
Yes.
the minimum
Yes.
throughout also.
We did do that, yes. So for what the things that I'm claiming now, don't think it matters very much whether we use this or the other statistic. This is, let's say, we chose this because somehow it makes, because we are interested in how this now plays out in a weakest link game, which where also the minimum of other people behavior matters. But I agree. It's like it's like that we need to do more research on this to understand this much better. This is what I'm going to talk about, sort of a proof of concept type of idea. How does that matter? And what can we learn from this? So this is where we are at the moment with this. So, okay, another thing we did is, since these are real groups, we listed their background characteristics, the social demographics, and we had the following reasoning. So from the sociology and social psychology French information, we have learned, we know that like befriends like. People tend to be similar on important dimensions. So those who are friends. So what does that mean? It means that if that's the case and we have real groups, then we expect within group homogeneity, so people should be similar within groups, but between group heterogeneity. So that means people like friends like they are in a group and other people are different, they are in another group. So let's say there's between group heterogeneity and within group homogeneity. And so we tested this for all these variables that you see in red. That's the case. So Yeah, that's the case for all these variables that you see here in red. It is the case that groups are more homogeneous within groups than between groups, according to analysis of variables. We ran on all of these variables. Some groups, some variables, the ones in black here, they are not significantly different between groups. Okay? So what does that mean? We have real groups. So say one lesson from this is these are real groups according to sociological criteria also. Yeah? These are real groups as you would expect it to be. So, so now next question: how do we study this now? Obviously, there, it's to in an experimentally meaningful way, because we want to measure the relationship closeness and we want to measure people's behavior. So we have a within subject design, which clearly raises the question of order effects. So how to minimize order effects? So the idea of the oneness thing, it exists before the experiment. Yeah? But obviously, if you ask it, it might influence behavior. If you ask it before the experiment, it might influence behavior. If you ask it after the experiment, the problem might be that there is a spillover from coordination success, yeah, onto the oneness question. So I did do very well, and therefore I like my group mates. Or we did do poorly, and therefore I dislike them. Yeah. So how do we solve this problem? So we decided for the main experiment that's the safer after some piloting, the safer sequence. But we did this too. We ran another study with a further 172 different people, where we had split things up into week 1 and week 2. In week 1, we start with the oneness question, some other questions, some intelligence task, and some background characteristics. We called them back a week later, where we did the sequence of the main experiments. And what do we learn from this? So the answer is this: oneness, if that makes a meaningful concept here, yeah, this measurement does not change within the span of a week systematically. Yeah. If it's the case that we have a real relation, they don't change systematically between week 1 and week 2. Yeah. So, and that also means if there is a systematic change, that's an assumption. The assumption is they don't change. And if there would be a change from week 1 to week 2, it would have been due to the week link here. Yeah. So, so what we find is that so week 1, the answer to the week 1 and the week 2 questions are the same. So we conclude from this that there is no spillover from the game to the answer they gave from this question. But if you want to say one weakness of such a study, as always, it's in some level it's correlational, and this is why people use the minimal group paradigms, inducing group memberships, which has the disadvantage that it is just artificial. Yeah, and there are real groups out there which also have which also have to solve important problems. Yeah. So I think we need to do it both ways. So this is the methodology here.
Is oneness related to inducing memberships of groups?
Don't think this is known. We didn't do it. I don't know. So one should say, I don't know how many. I haven't found papers that used oneness at the group level. So that most of these studies, these oneness tools, are the large majority we are aware of, are on personal relationships in psychology. There are some some newer studies on relationships with acquaintances, but to look at this at the group level is a new thing, I think. Yeah. So here is the game that we study. So this is the economics, so this was the psychology part, and after there was the psychology, sociology, and now to the economics of it. Yeah. So we borrowed this weekly game from Rance and Cooper in an important paper in the American Economic Review. And it uses this payoff function that you see here. Yeah, it uses these payoffs here. So people choose an effort level, which you can interpret this as an effort level. Yeah, working little, working very hard. Yeah, and this is the effort by this is my effort, and this is the minimum effort of the other people. So what happens, what's relevant for the payouts, what you get in this experiment depends on the minimum of what your group chooses. Yeah? This is like the equivalent of preparing an aircraft for departure. It can only depart after the slowest one has finished their job. Yeah? That's what this means. Yeah? You cannot leave before the aircraft is fully ready. Yeah? This is a big clinic game, and many organizational features have that, so people have argued that this is a good experimental model. The big clinic game is a good experimental model for lots of organizational issues. So it has, game theoretically speaking, 5 Pareto rankable strict Nash equilibria, where 1 is the worst one here, the minimum, everybody chooses that, and the best one is 5. So it's a coordination problem, there's strategic risk, because if I choose effort level 5, and the minimum is 1, I get 0. Yeah. So it's risky to choose high effort levels. And therefore, it tends to be a difficult problem under the standard paradigm where people interact anonymously and cannot talk, and there's no communication and no information. They only get information about what the group minimum is and what you actually got. You don't know what other people did. Yes, please.
So the choice of this game seems parallel to the fact that here what matters is the minimum. Of course, goes back a bit to the question how you decide to measure social cohesion, where it's the minimum.
Yeah, in our case,
so
yes.
I can see a bit how this measurement then it's more likely to be correlated, because at the end it depends on the person who is.
Yes, but you know, it's not at the same person level necessarily. But you know, we also took the average, and you can take other statistics, and it doesn't change what I'm going to show you now when I show the results. Yeah.
Why did you go for this stand where you have relatively low gains from trade and high costs of?
Yes. Because this experiment, so we wanted to choose an environment where where other people, in this case Brans and Cooper, have shown that under anonymous standard conditions it leads almost invariably to the lowest effort level. Yeah? So coordination is hard in this environment. It's a harsh environment. Yeah? So and there is no communication, there are no incentives. I will change that. You will see later in my presentation. Yeah? So there is this is called a bonus here. So we will vary this bonus later on. You will see, and then that does make a difference. Yeah, but here this is an environment where Brans and Cooper have shown that if you play this, and we have replicated this in pilot studies. If you replicate this, basically people end up in almost invariably, with a few exceptions, in a trap. Yeah? It's a social trap. People end up in the most inefficient outcome. And this is true. We played this experiment 50 periods. Yeah? And I thought maybe we managed to get. This is only 8 periods that we look at here. But if you play this for 50 periods, maybe people just see, okay, they get out of this, but they don't. We also played this experiment with people who didn't know who they were playing, which is unlike our experiment. So people in our experiment know who the others are, they cannot communicate with them. But we played this with people who know that they know the other person. Yeah? We played this in the Swiss Army, in a training camp. So people knew the other players, but not who they were in a group with. And again, we got this most inefficient outcome. So it's a this means it's a robust finding, it's a harsh environment. The question is, if group cohesion matters, and probably via channels of social preferences and beliefs maybe, it might help coordination. That's why we chose an environment where there is very little baseline coordination. Success, so we can then attribute this to the group cohesion. That's not. So main results. So here is, as I said, this is in our N matching now. This is period 1 in this weak link game. N matching means, remember, people come and they're broken up into new groups. Okay. So this is what you see in period 1, the distribution of these choices. You get a few 40% are initially at the minimum effort level 1 in period 1. A couple of groups, a few groups at level 2, and a few groups at level 3. And by period 8, you have almost 80% at minimum effort, and a couple of groups manage to hang on effort levels 2 and 3, but nobody manages to get to group level 3 or 4 or 5. Yeah. So, so what about group cohesion and minimum effort? So this is period 1. Again, so on this axis you see the group cohesion. This is goes from 1 to 5.5, and here is the minimum effort. The gray bars are from the F matching, and the white, the gray dots are from the F matching. The white ones from the N matching, and size is proportional to the number of underlying observations. What do you see here? High levels of coordination for high levels of group cohesion, and you can say, okay, is that's that looks better. If you see in the N matching, what you've seen before, there is nothing above level 3 in period 1. There are clearly some groups in the high group cohesion category who manage to maintain to start with effort level 5. Yeah. So the minimum effort 5, the best one, best out. But not everybody, as you can see here. In the what is it? Across the point here. You see here not everybody. So what about learning? So period 8. The relationship is even stronger. So the same thing, what you can see here. So the N matching, they basically all go down, and you see there is no for low group cohesion, there is no high coordination. Yeah, but to have a high group cohesion is a necessary condition for coordination success. Yeah, but not sufficient, because you also get coordination failure, some coordination failure with groups which are high in group cohesion. So it's not a surefire thing, but it's necessary to have high group cohesion in this environment to get out of the trap. Yeah, necessary but not sufficient.
Yeah, but minimum effort is not efficiency. So the sense.
Yes. So they go for that. Yes. They do, but they don't do it if they have no social relations. Yeah. Under anonymity or weak social relations, they don't manage to go up. So we can. Is there another question? Yes.
So playing a bit the devil's advocate, no?
Yes, please.
Couldn't be that if this is measuring punishment, I mean, the fact that I know with whom I came to the lab, and afterwards we were not that good, or who is the bad person who didn't invest.
But they would know it. Yes, it is possible. But maybe we can come back to that question towards the end of it. Yeah, so that's another drawback if you want for looking at real groups. They have a life after the experiment, maybe. Yeah. But what we did in the experiment, we would not know who did what. They just knew one of us chose effort level 3, and that was the meeting. Yeah. Yes. So let's look at some dynamics. So about where things go depending on the level of group cohesion. So we group them now into low cohesion, medium cohesion, and high cohesion. So this is low cohesion. What we have here is period 1 on the x-axis and period 8 on the y-axis. So so this means there was these groups, for example, they were in period 1 at level 3, and by period 8 they were down at level 1. Yeah. So one group, they stuck it they started at level 3 and they ended up at level 3. So they coordinated for some reason, and then they didn't leave that. Yeah, but overall, it means if you have low cohesion, you're likely to drop to the lowest level. So medium cohesion, things look a bit better. So there are groups which manage to improve over time, which never happens in these anonymous conditions and under low one. There's no improvement. Or at least there's one little improvement here. People either manage to stay or they drop. Yeah. Under high cohesion, there is also the possibility of improvement over time. Yeah. So that if this group, for example, in period 1 they chose effort level 2, but they managed to go up. Right? Yeah. So it does matter for that too. Yeah. So the dynamics of this group cohesion influences the dynamics of coordination, which without cohesion is always in one direction only. So this is just the averages, minimum effort averages over time, which nicely spread between these three levels of group cohesion over time. So you can also look at this in terms of wasted effort. So the wasted effort is effort that's above the minimum, because the minimum is the thing that is relevant, which has been used in the literature as a measure of coordination success, and how much effort is actually wasted in the group. So if everybody is coordinated, well, they all choose. If for some reason we have decided to pick level 3 in our group, then, and this is an equilibrium, then everybody should choose level 3 and nobody should choose anything higher. And that is, as we see, there's not much of a difference between the three levels of cohesion here in terms of the convergence towards low level of wasted effort. And this is, if you want to sort of call it like that, this is how equilibrium play looks like in period A. So, so this is the question now is how big is this effect? And is this actually really due to this group cohesion measure? But I have just shown you this correlation. The question is, maybe it's a function of some of the other statistics. And I showed you in the sociological part of this talk that that groups differ as expected according to lots of dimensions. And maybe some of those dimensions that actually drive this, and not ones. So, and group cohesion. So what we do is we run a regression as inspired by Brans et al., who report similar things, which maybe you can't really read this, but this is just, we include group cohesion here. The dependent variable is a minimum effort. We include group cohesion and lots of all these control variables that I showed you before, which show some input variables. So, and we ran three different models, which I now show you in some detail. So we ran a nested random effects model, and we include group cohesion here plus the control variables. And the only variable that's significant in this case is group cohesion. The control variables are jointly and individually insignificant. If we drop out, kick out group cohesion in model 2 here, none of these variables resumes significance, which means it's not just because of the correlation. So it's like these other variables don't seem to matter. So same is true for another estimation technique, standard clustering, where the control variables don't become significant. And then we use this method, which is a so-called kitchen sink approach. You throw in everything and ask the software to kick out the irrelevant variables, or the other way around. You start with the naked model and ask, what do we need to select in? And then the only variable that turns out to be relevant according to this is the group cohesion. All the others are being selected out or not selected in. So yes?
When I looked at your control variables, it seems that they are more or less individual variables of the different group members.
Yes, but
you could also think of other group items, like how much do I trust my fellow group members? Because now you have one, and which is how close am I? Maybe I'm very close to a person because this person has the office next door, but I don't trust this person. The question is, because this is a game where trust is very important, whether I think trust
was included.
Trust in the other group members? Because maybe you can go back. This is no, to the list you have in the regression. This is more the city, religion, my political attitude.
Yes.
This looks like
there is a whether you're a trusting person or not. This is an index of trust here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, doesn't seem to matter. But I'm not claiming here. This is just the start. So maybe all of this. It is not spurious with a bunch of these variables that we have measured. So maybe there's something else. That's possible. Yeah. Let's say when the beauty of this oneness tool is, it's a catch-all for lots of things. I might. Well, it's unlikely that I trust you if I don't feel close to you. It's unlikely, according to to what underlying this one is doing. Yeah? All of these basic psychological processes that predict high performance. Yeah? That I would not trust you if I would fit close to you. Yeah? Well, it has, that's maybe the psychologically rich thing about it is there are lots of psychological richness in this without having to measure it all. Yeah? You can say that's a for most economics purposes a useful feature. Maybe for some other purposes not so much. Yeah? Depends on this. That's very interesting, but it's a handy, rich tool without being overly complex. And I think it includes lots of the psychological process. But if you have a hunch about something that you have to test this. I don't know. So this is here I'm showing what we have done, and which is a start, I think, to looking at. I think the message that I will be drawing, the conclusion I will be drawing, this is a useful tool that deserves further scrutiny.
So what exactly did you measure here? So for instance, age, is it the average age in the group? Or?
That's a good question how we did it with age. I think in this particular case I think it's the individual average. Probably no. It is the average. It's a group. These are all group statistics.
Because so in this kind of game, what you are interested in is whether others are similar to you. Right? So if you are somebody who's very,
yes. So this
likes to put a lot of effort into it, and you would like to know whether others are too. And these variables are not really measuring this, right? But if you would tell people, right, so you're all similar with respect to age, religion, trust, and stuff, then at least what Chen and Chen would suggest in the minimal group paradigm, you would think that this affects behavior and coordination, even though there's no social relationship, it's all about similarity.
Yes. And we come back to that at the end. That can be. It can be that I think it's unlikely to be the case that strong, but maybe I can come back to that question. Yes, I mean, obviously, let's say similarity, you cannot really tease that apart because of this sociological component that we have real groups which are similar on all of these many dimensions. Yeah? It's quite likely that they feel similar to one another.
But you can construct variables that measure similarity in age.
Yes, which is what we did.
Well, if you just take the average, it's not similar.
No, but in the other variables that I showed you, when we were looking at group, within group heterogeneity, within group homogeneity, between group heterogeneity, that's exactly what we did. So, okay, the question is, how big and effective is this? We start here with the behavioral effects. So what I took, maybe we took this model, and calculated predicted cumulative distribution functions for given oneness level, group cohesion levels. Yes. So these are predicted cumulative distribution functions estimated from the backed out from the estimation that I showed you of the minimum effort levels. Okay. So what does it say? It says this is for the seven different levels of group cohesion. So for example, effort level 1, group cohesion level 1, basically nobody has anything to do with the other person in their group. So the least cohesive group. And so this is cumulative probability here. And so you see that about 95% of the prediction is that 95% of the cases people will end up in minimum effort level of 1. So with completely cohesive groups, you get coordination failure almost certain. The opposite extreme is group cohesion of level 7. Here, level 7. Here, there's only 5% chance of ending up at the minimum effort level. And but it's still, it goes up to about so this cumulative, it's about 40 40% or so, 45%, that you get, you have a chance of 45% or more to get at least at the level of 4. So that it is still not a surefire thing that you end up in the most efficient outcome, but it's much more likely. And complete coordination failure is very unlikely. Yes, Steve?
But this is an in-sample prediction. So could you do the same and make an for the second experiment where you have to change the sequence? And do this and have an out-of-sample prediction and then see how this correlates to actual behavior in the second experiment. That would be extremely strong, wouldn't it?
Maybe I showed you something similar in a few moments. So not in this, we didn't do it but let's see. So, what does that mean? I think it means that there is a big behavioral difference between these, between high cohesion and low cohesion. But it still illustrates that coordination is difficult.
I'm objecting that you say the minimum effort level measures coordination. It's just, this measures cooperation. You see, if they all do one, it's a strict equilibrium, they're perfectly coordinated.
Yes.
So you have two dimensions, coordination and cooperation.
Okay, that's true. So
So I would just have...
okay, no, that's okay. That's true because of this. Yeah. So they are perfectly coordinated. You know, in all of these groups. This is period 8. Yeah.
And they go to
And
5, they achieve both. They're perfectly cooperating
yes,
and perfectly coordinated.
exactly.
But below,
yes,
you don't know.
Yes, exactly. No, that's true. That's true. So they are perfectly coordinated, but they are not cooperating. Yeah. So you see this. But let's say again, it illustrates that to have perfect cooperation in this setting, you need high cohesion. Yeah. It doesn't seem to come without that. Okay, so so maybe this is already the answer to Dirk's question. So this is now we did these experiments a week later. This new set of experiments. This is what I call the robustness check here. So this is the average of the. So this is actually flipped around. I just realized this is not exactly correct. It's the other way around. So this is this here. This is the main experiment that I showed you before. So broken down by the 3 levels of low cohesion, medium cohesion, and high cohesion. Average minimum effort. So see, as it increases here linearly. So in week 2. So what's different in these stability check experiments is that in week 1 we ask them about their oneness, and then they come in week 2 and play this experiment. So what this means is that we expected that basically these things are the same. They are largely the same. So if you are a low oneness group, a low group cohesion group, you are just confirming that fact, and you coordinate at whatever level you manage, which is very low, or cooperate on a low level. So the same is true for high cohesion group. We just reconfirm that we are a highly cohesive group, and we manage to coordinate and to cooperate at high levels. So this medium cohesion is interesting in that this is unexpected. So there seems to be a bit of a thing, if you're unsure about how cohesive you are, it makes you think about your group, and that seems to help coordination a bit. In that this is higher than here in the benchmark. Here. This seems to be a bit higher. But overall, we replicate the same thing. I don't know whether this is something like an out-of-sample prediction, the way you had it in mind, but that's what we did so far. Yeah. So, so where are we? So interim summary. So it seems like that the strength of group cohesion explains coordination success, coordination/cooperation success without any communication in an environment where previous research and our own research have shown that coordination failure, cooperation failure is very likely. So it's a sizable effect according to this. Yeah, coordination failure is highly likely if there's low cohesion, and coordination failure is unlikely with high cohesion, but still not so. Coordination is still half problem. So what we ask now is sort of another benchmarking exercise in terms of the economic importance of this. What type, we will ask the question, what type of incentive do we need, yeah, to use the standard way of looking at, standard economics way of looking at things, to get the same level of coordination? Yes?
Not quite convinced about the statement that there's no communication, right? Because with friends, you are more likely to talk about this later on. And we know from cooperation games, for instance, that this will have an effect. So we anticipated communication later on.
Yes.
So you might be, I mean, you're saying they are completely anonymous, but you might be less willing to lie to your friends, and you might anticipate that you have to justify that you thought the others are stupid, and so you will not coordinate on a high level. Right? So these kinds of things.
Or you will coordinate, yes.
I mean, these anticipated communication effects might actually have an effect. Because we know from cooperation games these things have huge effects.
Yeah. Okay, let's come back to that maybe. So maybe there is some element in this, but I don't think you can explain the whole thing. So this is the reason here. Can social preferences explain the results? Because obviously they are probably higher among people who know one another and potentially may talk to one another about this after experiment. So first question, incentives and coordination. So we go back to Brans and Cooper, who studied this in the first place. So they argue we need to use, in their setting, they ask it differently. They don't talk about group cohesion or anything. They say, if you have an environment, yeah, what they call organizational failure, which is the case with this bonus here, what we studied before, yeah, then maybe we can use incentives and help, therefore, the group to lift the group out of this coordination failure by using appropriate bonuses. What do bonuses do? So they increase the bonus to, let's say in their experiment, to level 14. What does that do? It makes coordination, if you look at the payoffs, it makes coordination to the Pareto efficient equilibrium more attractive, and it lowers, that's the main thing it does. So, and it lowers a bit the out of equilibrium loss, and that should help coordination, and it does in their experiment. So what we do is the same thing. We just go the whole range. We add levels 22 and levels 30 to that design. Yeah? So basically, four different levels with a difference of bonus of 8 per 3. So 240 new people here. So here's the result. So what you see here is group cohesion. The red dots are the averages, expected averages, calculated from the cumulative probabilities that I showed you. What's the expected level of coordination? Group minimum per group coordination, group cohesion. And onto this we map the results from these different bonus experiments. Yeah, so here, for example, if we have a bonus of 6, which is our benchmark case, we end up at a low level here, but we can go up to an extremely high level of bonus to get the same thing. So these are now experiments with people who don't know one another. This is now solely based on the standard economic approach of studying incentives under anonymous conditions. But it means to achieve this very high level of coordination here, yeah, you need an extremely high bonus, yeah, to achieve the same thing. It's an expensive thing in terms of this experiment for the experimenter or for the company, to use that high levels of bonus. Or to put it differently, group cohesion has a high economic value because you can get efficient coordination, cooperation, basically for free, just from the group cohesion itself. Yeah. So, okay, maybe coming to the last point of my talk here, and it relates a little bit to some of the discussion about after group, after experiment communication and so on. So and social preferences at the same time. So suppose we are a close group, and probably if we are really close, I'm as much concerned about my payoff as about my group mates' payoff. Yeah, because I feel so close to them, they are basically the same. We have merged, overlapping identities. I should care about them as much as I care about myself. Suppose that's the case for everybody. This amounts to the same thing as there is only one payoff. It's like an average, like as if we would average payoffs between us. Yeah? Okay, so we did run an experiment with this idea, again with people who don't know one another. Yeah? Anonymous conditions, the standard way of how we do most experiments. And then we tell them, you earn your payoffs during this experiment, and then at the end of this, we will share all the payoffs between you. You will receive all the same payoff, yeah? Which is the same as saying that we have we care about one another completely. Yeah? So a related idea is that after the experiment, people actually do this sharing because they know one another, they talk about it, they share. So we did ask people this before the experiment. We did ask them, did you talk about this? Did you talk about sharing? Yeah. And some groups said yes, we did. Did you agree on something? Most groups said no. But so that it is this possibility that they do it. Yeah. So we did another treatment, the second treatment, where we implemented this sharing with 80% probability. So we told them, in 80%, we will pay you the average of all your total payoffs. And with 20% probability, you will get what you have heard, which is a sort of mimics this type of after experiment interaction where they talk and share and go for a beer. Yeah. So does that matter? It matters basically not at all. So this is what you get. It's a share of 100% when payoffs are shared equally between the people. So they get about an average coordination of 2.5, which amounts to something like an intermediate level of group cohesion. With a share 80%, it's very close. It doesn't really make a difference. But you don't get up to the very high levels of coordination success that you can get with very high levels of group cohesion.
Simon, perhaps I misunderstood it and just clarified this. Because if I remember correctly, you didn't have any group which had a group cohesion beyond 5 point something.
That's right, yes. This is out of sample.
So, but that would then mean that the share 100% is fairly close to the best you can get in real life in your data when they have this group cohesion, no?
Let's say it's still up here.
Slightly higher, but not much.
Yes, that's true. So well, it depends. The disadvantage of going for what we did, is just look at real groups and sample them, and you get what you get. We got the variation that you get. But it is conceivable that you can assemble groups, or you get groups that are higher out there. And what this result suggests is that from the estimated data is that you can do substantially better. But it's true in our sample, we had the group cohesion was here, so it's still better, still somewhat below. But social preferences clearly matter. And either because people have an afterlife, or because they put a lot of weight on other people's payoffs. So,
is it only about social preferences, but isn't it also risk sharing? So
yes, okay, that was a bit short. So there's a paper by Chen and Chen, which Axel mentioned in the Jahr. They used the induced the minimal group paradigm, and they have a theoretical model about social preferences and how group identity translates changes social preferences. And what social preferences do, and that's what also this, if you look at the equilibrium, if you look at the gain that comes out of such a sharing exercise, it does actually reduce the strategic risk. So that's the reason why social preferences can help coordination. It does two things. It makes like the incentives. It makes cooperation on the highest level more efficient, more worthwhile, it's bigger money, and it reduces the strategic risks, or the out of equilibrium loss that you have if you don't coordinate.
But I'm not sure whether you need to have social preference at all. I mean, this is, if I'm kind of the sucker in this game, I know I only have to take like 20% of it. And
you don't necessarily, no, that's not necessarily, but if you do have social preferences,
Yeah.
and that's one reason why group cohesion might matter, then it helps. For that reason, it's just, it doesn't hurt that much if I lose but Wandel gains. So it's just because I care about him as much as I care about me, and or because we share or something. It's like it doesn't. So.
Yeah, but the story is you have identical twins, because from
Yes.
the incentive structure you have reduced them, but they still have to coordinate on a strict equilibrium. So although we are identical twins, we choose independently.
Yeah, it was interesting to run this experiment with the identical twins. We would have
There's a
4 identical quadruplets.
yeah, but you incentivize, you have
Yes, exactly,
because
yes,
they have
yes.
completely identical.
That's true. So that was the idea here. We mimic this situation, and it's again isolating this argument. Take away all relationships. It's just in and of itself. What can social preferences approached that way actually get us? They get us somewhere, but not the full way. So the question here is summarized. So the question was: social relationships are an ubiquitous fact of life, but for various reasons, partly for some reasons that we have discussed here, this is, we have not really studied them, but they are probably a hidden production factor in any real group. They are part of the social fabric, and they influence how people behave. They influence what people think about others, how close they are. They help coordinating beliefs and lots of other mechanisms. And therefore they are worth measuring and studying their consequences. So this is just a start, let's say, proof of concept. We showed that we found that stronger social relations, higher group cohesion, actually makes coordination failure less likely, but lacking in our environment, lacking group cohesion, results in coordination failure. And we believe it's a sizable economic effect, both measured at the behavioral level and measured at the incentive level that you would need to match the same thing. To us, this is an example, if you remember my introductory quote by Baron and Krebs, how social and economic forces can interact here. And they also make sense of managerial practices of team building exercises. People want to understand one another and go for a drink, spend a weekend, venture trip or something. Why do we do that? This is an explanation. Really. So it's a potentially interesting tool, we believe, from this Wandel tool, because it's simple and it has interesting economic consequences. As I said, it's proof of concept. The question is it portable? Because it also, if we benchmark this here as a coordination game, but I went back to my favorite game, the Public Goods game, and you get the same thing. So sort of higher. This was a one-shot game, so it helps people coordinate, cooperate. The higher the group cohesion is, the more they cooperate without people. Are there lots of open questions? Yes. So, question for future research. Is it social preferences? This is an indication. There might be more refined investigation into this. And social preferences are not the whole story. So maybe what group cohesion also does is what's called team reasoning. It helps us thinking like a team, therefore putting us in the shoes of everyone else, and that helps according to team reasoning theory. And this is the agenda. There are lots of questions that we've been asking here. There's clearly a drawback of this research is it has these feelings that these problems that you always have if you look at real groups. You cannot study you cannot really control that what happens after the experiment. You can minimize it in various ways that we did, but I don't think that's a sufficiently good reason to stop, to always use the same old tools and to avoid these other questions that are also necessary to study some sort of social reality and see where it gets us. And I think this is a promising start from our perspective at least, of something that's socially rich, very simple, and potentially quite powerful. Thank you very much.